Okay, so we've discussed how Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iran, and Iraq are coping with low oil prices. We've had plenty of that on this show. We thought we'd take a look at another major producer, Venezuela. It faces massive inflation, shortages, rolling blackouts, and government employees are only working 2 days a week. We have a guest coming up who says that low oil, it simply exacerbated existing problems and that higher oil prices won't, in fact, be the answer. We are joined by Reggie Thompson, Latin America analyst at Stratfor. Reggie, great to see you. Thanks very much for coming on the show. Just give us a description of what's happening in Venezuela, because they've got these massive oil reserves. How come they're broke?
So really, it's a question of high public spending over the last decade under the government of Hugo Chavez that is having consequences right now in the government of Nicolas Maduro. So the government really started this sort of runaway spending, runaway public spending over the past decade, and there was a lot of underinvestment into key sectors of the country, such as into the electricity generating sector, which accounts for quite a bit of the current energy crisis that Venezuela is facing. Something that has been exacerbated by drought, but really is a question of underinvestment. There's been underinvestment into the oil sector as well. So PDVSA is going to suffer production declines potentially in the future because of that underinvestment, but also because potential default later on in the year on its foreign debt, and because a lot of contractors, people like Halliburton and Schlumberger are really no longer extending credit to the company because it's simply not paying back what it owes them. So it's really a perfect storm of just problems facing the company right now.
Now, Reggie, I'm sorry, there's a risk we might lose our camera. We'll get as much out of you as we can, though. So tell us just give us an idea of how addicted this government is to oil. What proportion of its revenue comes from crude?
So because about 95% of the government's export revenue comes from petroleum exports, it really did feel the external shock in 2014 in a big way when oil prices collapsed. So because of that, you've seen a sharp contraction in imports, which are mostly managed by the state. And so right now, really the government has to make do with a declining stock of dollars. They really don't have enough dollars to both invest in necessary public activities such as energy generation. They don't have enough dollars to optimally fund PDVSA, the state-owned energy company, and they really don't have enough dollars to import food at optimal levels. And adding to the problem are the currency controls, which encouraged a lot of corruption over the past decade. And so really right now, you're in a situation where there's not enough enough food getting to the people who need it. There's not enough dollars getting to the sectors that need it. And so Venezuela really is headed to even worse trouble.
And they've been printing up more and more money. And apparently De La Rue, who are the world's biggest currency printer, has warned them, hey, you're not paying the bills for the actual money that you want to distribute.
Yes, that is a major problem for Venezuela right now because over the past years, they've been financing an increasingly large public deficit simply by printing more bolivars, which has contributed to the growing inflation that some analysts are saying is going to trend towards hyperinflation in coming years. And so that really is feeding a social crisis. The economic crisis is morphing into a social crisis as prices keep going up for the average Venezuelan, and that's just stoking discontent across the country. And really, some of the upcoming triggers for social unrest that we're seeing, things like a potential cutting in the output of the Guri Dam, which provides quite a bit of the country's hydroelectric generating capacity. It really is something that's a concern going forward. If you see major outages, even further outages than what we're seeing right now, we may be on the brink of major social unrest in the country, which will affect how the government reacts, whether or not President Nicolas Maduro either decides to resign or is convinced by segments of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, the ruling party, to resign to deflect public anger away from the government.
And you reckon there's a chance the military might say, hey, we're taking charge?
Well, the government of Nicolas Maduro is very reliant on the armed forces, both to maintain social stability, but also because the military has, after the 2002 coup attempt against Hugo Chavez, the military, their loyalty was bought to some extent. They were involved in more sectors of the economy and more state activities. They essentially made more government policy. And so right now, really, Nicolas Maduro's continued stability of his government depends on how loyal the military gets. And you have to remember the military is also suffering from a lot of the same problems that the regular citizens are suffering from, things like hyperinflation. And the social discontent that this is going to spur is something that the military may be called upon to deal with. So because they're making so much policy at this point, we do know that sectors of the country, sectors of the ruling party have asked the president to resign, and that is an ongoing source of tension between sectors of the military, sectors of the party, and the president himself.
And so is it fair to blame it on Hugo Chavez entirely? I mean, he had good intentions. In part anyway, it seems he wanted some of this oil wealth to get to the poorer parts of society. He succeeded in some measure there.
Yes, it's important to note, though, that during the presidency of Chavez, a lot of the unsustainable economic policies that are currently affecting Venezuela were set up. So it's basically, the blame can be laid at the doorstep of the Chavez government, but really it's also been the refusal of President Nicolas Maduro to take corrective measures for fear of affecting the bottom line for him, which is political popularity. You can also lay some blame on the Maduro government at this point, although lots of the distortions were set up under Chavez.
We've only 30 seconds left, but Washington has been at odds with Venezuela, so presumably it's not broken-hearted to see the crisis there.
Yes, the United States really has sort of opposed politically the government of Venezuela for quite a while. So really the United States would most likely welcome some sort of transition away from the current government. But the thing is that you have to remember that just because a new government may be on the horizon, it doesn't mean that it won't have to suffer a lot of the problems that the current government is suffering from. And it may still be a PSUV-led government, and not an opposition-led one, simply because if the transition towards another government is delayed until next year, the vice president takes over without the need to hold new elections.
Thanks so much, Reggie. An amazing situation. Our guest has been Reggie Thompson, Latin America analyst at Stratfor.